Hello and welcome to the next episode of Cylinder Radio. I'm your host, Will Roosh, high school teacher in Los Angeles that now has my voice back. I had a vocal cord polyp, so I haven't recorded a podcast in like a month or so, but I'm back and I'm really excited to do this. I have a guest coming, returning after it's been a few years, but he is a comedian, a libertarian, and an author now with an amazing new book out called That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. Lou Perez, thank you for coming back on the show. This last time you were on, we talked about just like comedy, censorship, and stuff like that in like this new age. And that's kind of what the book was about. But I read it. You were nice enough to send me a copy. And with my crazy life, I like didn't get around to reading it until it came out in audiobook. And then I got it in like 3 days. And I was like, oh my gosh, this hits on so many levels. It's really, really entertaining, man. It's really entertaining. And it's like speaking, whatever, truth to power, as corny as that it says, it really is just like highlighting what's going on, but in a really entertaining way. So I love it. And I'm excited to talk about it here. Thanks for coming on, man.
Dude, no, thanks for having me. And really, I'm honored that you read it and you enjoyed it. And yeah, it's been a few years since we talked, and it's been great watching you grow too, like your audience, and also your I think your bravery too to step into conversations that a lot of people don't want to have. So if I'm not vocal every time that you put something out there, just know that I just think it's great. So.
Well, thank you. I think what it is I am just in more of a unique situation where I'm not at a school that I like. People try to get me fired all the time, but I'm not at a school that's interested in firing me. My wife makes a good living, so I have like protections that I think a lot of other teachers don't. But there is this element of like having courage. I mean, I don't think of myself as a courageous person because I have friends that are soldiers and whatnot, but there is an element of that's like, yeah, I gotta do what's obvious in front of me. And I think that's a part of your book too, is like highlight, like, this is clearly funny. I guess one place to start, Lou, is like did you see the figure skater in like Finland?
I saw a clip, and honestly, I didn't look too deeply into it. I couldn't believe it was real. I could not believe it. Maybe you could just tell your audience, explain what you saw there.
Yeah, again, I just saw a clip, but apparently it was a transgender figure skater who came out and everyone was celebrating, saying how beautiful it was. And they they didn't look like they knew how to figure. They didn't look like they knew how to skate, like ice skate. And they fell down just like taking a turn, and no one said anything. And it's like, no, that's funny. That's fun. That's funny. It's funny. It's the name of your book is like, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. Why can't it be funny when everyone's cheering? It's like Emperor Has No Clothes. Like, it's funny, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's based on that clip. I mean, it's ridiculous on so many levels. Like you said, it's forget the person not being able to figure skate. The person couldn't even skate. And look, figure skating is known, very much for, having a lot of gay athletes. I'm sure that there are plenty of trans athletes that are amazing figure skaters that could have been highlighted. Maybe Finland doesn't have that population, but I mean, I would think too, Finland is just a dynamo when it comes to ice hockey as well. Like, it seems like the kids are brought up skating. So I don't know where they found this person. Maybe this person, in addition to identifying as trans, is identifying as a Finn and isn't actually one. I don't know. And then you wonder how much of this might be sort of kind of a version of real life trolling, just seeing how much you could get away with without somebody calling you out on it too.
Yeah. Like, how far can we kind of push it? And I don't know. And is that conscious or not? I don't know. So as I was reading your book, I was writing some stuff down because I was like, oh, I really hope I can talk to you about it. One thing I just want to say, because I've done podcasts about reading. I'm in high schools. Kids don't want to read. Was this strategic on your end? The chapters are very short. It's like bite-sized chunks. How many? There's like 40 chapters or something, right?
Yeah, I think 38. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I cut out a couple of shorter chapters too. So I could have made it to 40. I think I'm not sure if I intentionally set out to do it, But over the years, just in my line of work and where my focus has been, it's been sketch comedy, stand-up comedy. And so I think I've just been, kind of training all these years to,
Get it quick.
yeah, to quick get that, get as pack as much as you can into a short space. And then also something that happened when I, started writing the book, part of me, I was like, I don't know if I have enough for a book. Like it just doesn't, I'm like, how does one write a book, And I just started looking around, and my father-in-law had this memoir from, I think it was this kid who had gone to like a prep school in England and wrote like his memoir. And I looked at it, and the font was very big, which I was like, oh, that's great, because I have terrible vision. And then the chapters were really short. And so from that, I was like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like maybe I could have some chapters that are just like, a couple of pages and then move on. So I think it all, sort of came together and worked out that way. And I like hearing that too. Because, for people who, might be thinking about, oh, should I pick up the book or not? Like you could easily consume these out of order, here and there, if you have a minute, pick it up, read a little bit, put it down, come back to it.
Yeah, I heard Naval Ravikant, that smart philosopher guy, say something along the lines of read what you love until you love to read. And your book is exactly like that. You could just keep it, right on by the toilet or something. I guess people use their phones now if they read on the toilet. But like you could just like open it up and start reading, and you can get, just bang it out in a couple of minutes each chapter. And it's not really chronological. It kind of covers a whole bunch of different things. I mean, it covers like also there's so many elements here, like when we talk about like social justice and stuff, but like the struggle of a comedian. I actually moved out I'm from Pennsylvania, so I'm from the East Coast, but I moved out to California because my best friend at the time from college and stuff moved out here to do stand-up comedy. So I was like, I'm familiar with that world. All my friends when I first moved out here were in comedy world. And it's really hard, man. I mean, it's a grind. It's an unbelievably like thankless pursuit. And you kind of go into that in a cool way, just like how kind of just like pride swallowing it is constantly. Do you think that builds like a certain level of resilience in comedians? And if that's the case, then why are so many of them just like pardon my language, but like whiny bitches now? Like,
yeah,
is there a connection there?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure. Yeah, it could be tough, like getting into the psychology of other people. Obviously, like trying to figure out. I mean, what I found definitely is it took me a while to even attempt stand-up comedy. So by the time I tried stand-up comedy, I'd already been doing improv and sketch comedy for years. So I had, performance experience. And also what I ended up taking to stand-up comedy, especially when I started like hosting my own show, was kind of that energy of improv and sketch, where it's sort of like the audience might be down, but I'm going to bring them up. It's sort of a lot more fun, or a desire to be a lot more fun. Whereas, looking around, there are a lot of people who just started in stand-up comedy who were just kind of like to themselves, quiet, some of them kind of miserable, others unhappy, some definitely having aspirations to do stand-up comedy as a professional. Others seem to just look at this as a way to kind of get up on stage and therapy and kind of have
I've seen
therapy
that. Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of people come to stand up, for all different reasons. But I think like you said, you need to build up a thick skin if you want to do it, because ultimately you're getting up in front of a room full of strangers most nights, and there's going to be days when you're trying everything and it's just not working, and you got to stay up there, and you gotta while that clock is ticking down, and you got to try to work with some of the the roughest situations that are put your way.
Yeah, and you detail that like bombing on stage and stuff like that, and bombing in front of specific audiences and stuff. You kind of bring us into how tough that might be, because it's from the comedians I've talked to and people who talk about it on different podcasts and stuff. It's seems terrible. I mean, I've flopped in like lessons and stuff, or I've had like a booger hang in front of students, but it's not the same thing. I don't know. It's just like, I kind of just rolled off my back, I think. But in front of an audience like that, like just like you're stuck, you still have, 3 more minutes to go, and it's just nothing. Like
Yeah.
that's a scary situation. You'd think that that would build more resiliency in the people who do it, because it's that concept is doing hard things. We were talking before we started recording about these like ice baths, these ice plunges I'm doing, and it's like, part of it is, who knows if Andrew Huberman and all those guys are right. I don't know, but it's hard. And I think doing hard things makes you more equipped to do more hard things. So I see that in what you do, and yet I don't know if I see it translate as much as I would think it would.
Well, I think there might be, there might be like a generational thing too happening. So like when I started doing comedy, I'm going to be 41 in on the 26th of February. So I have like, we're recording this, so I have a few more weeks of just being 40. And starting my comedy journey like 20 years ago, which I never really thought of until I started writing the book. I'm like, oh my God, I've been doing this a long time. And in that time you have different generations of comedians coming up. So there's the generation of comedians I grew up watching, which are, early on are legends like George Carlin and Richard Pryor, and then Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence and Jim Carrey, and, then Will Ferrell and all those guys. So it's like all these just heavy hitters of comedy, all the time that I was growing up, and then trying to get into comedy. It was really at a time where you had to earn your laughs. It wasn't, the expectation wasn't, oh, I'm going to go out there and it's just going to be given to me, or people are going to clap, for everything that I say. So, so there were years and years of experimentation, bombing, just learning your craft, getting better, not getting what you want, and needing to work and work and work, where I wonder if now we have like a younger generation of comedians who might not even necessarily be young in age, but depending on when they started and what kind of environment they're coming up in, there might be different expectations there. There might be an expectation sort of like, I'm getting up here and I'm telling you my truth, and it is incumbent upon you to respect that. Like, and it's like, whoa, no, wait a minute, wait a minute. No, you're supposed to be an entertainer. You're supposed to be making these people laugh. This isn't, the people aren't there to validate whatever you think of yourself, So.
Yeah, it's like, it's changing. I mean, yeah, the one of the topics that you covered that I think you did a really great job articulating what I've kind of been thinking about and seeing around really well is the idea of punching up and punching down. Eric Weinstein has some quote along the lines of like, if I can't criticize you, you're not my equal, which I think is really cool. I love that concept. I'm going to make fun of trans people and black trans people and black disabled trans people and black disabled Muslim trans people. If it's funny, if it's not, if there's something funny going on, like I'm also going to make fun of, cis het white man with, who's symmetrical, whatever it is. Like funny is funny. And I think that it's almost doing people a disservice to say like, oh, I can't laugh, at this situation, like you're too delicate or something like that. And you covered that really, really well. Can you just share a little bit on your thoughts on that concept of punching up and punching down in comedy?
Thanks. Yeah. I think very much in line with Eric Weinstein, his take on it, where it's sort of, I mean, can you think of being any more condescending than to say to somebody, I'm sorry, I can't make fun of you. You're beneath me, for any reason, for any amount of reason. It's like that's almost like, the ultimate roast. It's sort of like, imagine being up against somebody and you're in a roast battle, and the other person's allowed to sling whatever they want at you, and then you're just there, smoking your cigarette, and it's like, sorry, you're beneath me, and then you just you just ash on the stage. It's like, ooh, that would be quite an awful experience. I didn't mention this in the book, but there was a time when I was doing years ago when I was doing an open mic, and the comedian that went up before me had cerebral palsy. And it took him a very long time to just make it to the stage, right? Because he was walking and kind of shaking. And He had a wheelchair, but he insisted on, walking to the stage. Took him a long time to get there. Took him a long time to get the microphone out of the stand. And then he did his set. It was, tough to understand, some of the stuff that he was doing, but that he was saying. But he finished the set. He went back to his seat. And then I was up next, and I opened up by saying, man, you put me in a really weird position because you're a comic, but my whole life, my parents told me not to laugh at people like you. And he started cracking up. Like he was, just legitimately there. And it's like there was a moment that we shared where like we're equals, man.
Yeah.
You're a comic,
Yeah.
I'm a comic, and here we are. We're sharing this moment together. And how cool is that? And also, how cool is it that this guy has the balls to get up on stage and do what so many people don't have the balls to do? So I think there's, a real, I like the idea of let's treat people equally, let's be ready. And then also, like, look, if you're going to dish it out too, got to be willing to take it. I think there are far too many people who get away with, whether it's in comedy, making fun of classes of people that you're allowed to make fun of,
right,
or when it's in any other mode of life, being able to criticize people without, thinking that person cannot in turn, criticize them. So.
Yeah, I remember seeing a guy. I think he might have had cerebral palsy on like America's Got Talent or something. And he was funny. He had jokes like I was in high school. I was voted most likely to have the best parking space or something like that. Like there were jokes that were like, oh, that's good. Like he's making fun of himself, being self-deprecating, like we all should. And again, if you're like the person who's in a tough situation, you're born into a tough situation, you find yourself in a tough situation, and you go, you know what, I can't. This is too serious. I can't laugh at it. I don't think that's the best approach to your situation. Right? Like we all have to be self-deprecating to some degree, and then we all have our own issues, and some people have more than others. But what's a better medicine than like looking at your situation, trying to find the light in it, trying to find the light in a dark place? Seems like a good approach, right?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt. I know you've talked about like cobbling of the American mind, and one of the catalysts to that book was Greg Lukianoff had suffered depression, as a younger man, and he went through like a cognitive behavioral therapy, and it really helped him. And thank God it did, because he's done such amazing work. And what he noticed was basically all the kids who were sort of growing up in this this particular generation going to college, they were all being taught things that would only help to make them more depressed and more fragile and less likely to be able to handle life. And he's like, fucked up. And he could look at himself and say, look, I would be fucking dead right now I'm sorry, my apologies for cursing, but he might have gone through with suicide had he not learned the tools to cope. So I think it's really important too to, when we're looking at these things, and for people to ask themselves, like, are you really going to be better off if you are incapable of taking a joke? Like, is that really going to help you in life?
Yeah, like some things are just not open to be talked about. Another thing you said that I loved was when you were talking about how we can't make fun of like Kamala Harris because she's like a woman of color. It's like, hold on, if you can't, like, what's more, I'm going to paraphrase kind of what you're saying here, but like, it's like, she's the vice president. She's a very weak heartbeat away from the most powerful position in the world. Like, that's never going to be punching down. Like, how dare you say that that's punching down to shoot up at that elite? And the same thing goes for the, anyone in these really powerful positions, but they belong to these certain identity markers. So then just by that, it's punching down. That really, I thought was a really astute point. It doesn't, that's somewhere where I'm going to draw a line and say like, no, that's not the way this works.
Yeah, because it becomes rather cynical, I think, where it's this idea of like using whatever identity markers as cover for, people in power who, are able to do really, really terrible things. And yeah, and it's also, I think it's just so dishonest too, with the idea that the only problem one might have with Kamala Harris, who, couldn't even get the Democrats to vote for her.
Yeah.
The only problem you could possibly have with her is that she's a quote unquote woman of color. Yeah, I'm actually, I might, lose some fans here. I'm going to come out and admit it. I've talked about this before. I think that she's actually like a gorgeous woman. I think she's such an attractive woman. I know I have a lot of friends who can't stand her. I think she's absolutely gorgeous. So I think even on, not only is she a vice president, I think she's also a beautiful woman. So when you talk about, privilege, I think that she's rocking a lot of that.
All right.
Lost so many people. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just weird. Maybe I'm just.
Hey man, no judgment. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's hard for me to get around the personality, but I don't know what she'd look like in lingerie. Like that's the thing. Is like, can we like sexualize someone in her position of power? Like, yeah, I don't know. Yes, I don't know. It's just like anything. Like you have to be able to poke fun of your leaders, the people at the very top who are in the positions of power. That's really an important thing, and that's always been like a left thing too.
Yeah.
It's been the conservatives who are like, oh no, that's a very powerful position that you got to respect the authority of these individuals and stuff like that. And now it seems like that's kind of easing away from like the conservative way, because I think even conservatives were open a little bit to making fun of like Trump's ridiculousness, which I think is necessary.
Yeah, and I think with Kamala Harris, it's if someone were to have a problem with sexualizing her, I mean, she is credited with sleeping her way to the top. So I think that's part of it. And I saw a similar thing during the Trump years where people were calling out Melania's naked pictures and stuff like that, and saying like, oh, this is the honorable first lady and all that. I think everything is just, everything's up for grabs. Everything could be a target.
Yeah.
So
you go in a decent bit in the book about like your background, and and then you talk about the term Latinx, because you're Latino, and one of my, sometimes we talk about like what's like the biggest celebrity death that affects you the most, and I often say Greg Giraldo. Greg Giraldo, because I think that he was like obviously really smart, hilarious, but he also was, I think he was a good social commentator. And he talked about that in his stand-up, about how he wasn't like Hispanic enough in a lot of ways. So he got just categorized as white, I think he was like Colombian or something like that. But you struggle with that a bit too, because people just assume that you're a white guy. And so therefore I can like dump on you and make fun of you for all these things. And like you go into a bunch of stories about that. And like, you don't have a say when it comes to Latinx and stuff because of the way you look. But it's such a weird thing. Lou, it's such a strange thing. When I heard about the Meghan Markle thing, I was very confused. And I ended up finally asking my wife, I was like, what's going on with this? I think you mentioned this in the book, don't you? Yeah. Because I asked her
a few lines.
I think you did. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one. Because I was like, what's going on? She's like, well, she's black. I was like, what? She's black? I was like, I didn't know. Oh, okay. Well, it makes a little bit more sense now. She's talking about racism, but I had no idea. But like, I don't know. I feel like it's different with... Is it different with Hispanic? Like, because if there are black people that look white and there's Hispanic people that look white, and like, I don't know how that whole thing works. How do you like do you make sense of that whole hodgepodge thing?
Yeah. Well, for one, I think I find the humor in it. I mean, for one thing, it's like in my book, I talk about when Antonio Banderas won an award. Right. I don't know if it was like a Lifetime Achievement Award or an acting award, something like that. Yeah. And people were really confused because Antonio Banderas is Spanish. Spain is in Europe. Spain is not one of the colonies. Therefore, wait a minute, how can we hail, and praise this Spaniard, right? When we're still trying to get, Hispanic, Latino representation, all that. And it becomes really goofy. Like I have a friend of mine who's Italian, who looks like, you know, when they put like those images of like what Jesus would look like.
Yeah.
It's like Jesus, he doesn't look, Jesus isn't blonde hair and blue eyes. It's like, this is what, that's what my friend looks like. Like he looks like a Middle Eastern dude, but he's Italian, you know? And I think that it's, you know, it's funny, and it's very goofy, you know, when we talk about, you know, these categories, you know, because like my dad is from Argentina, his dad is Spanish, my grandmother is like part native of indigenous, you know, of Argentina. And it's like when they came together and made my dad, like my dad looks like looks like a Turk. That was his nickname growing up, Turco. He looks, you know, he looks like, you know, he could be from all over these different places. And then, you know, somehow I'm made with my mom and all. I think like the categories, I guess, you know, to you know, to stop being long-winded, like they're just so silly. And especially when people are trying to, you know, add so much, give so much gravitas to it. Like Meghan Markle needs to be this capital BLACK woman. And it's like, and I had the same reaction to you. I'm like, she looks like a white chick to me. Like I grew up in Queens.
Yeah.
She looks like she could be a freaking Greek girl. She could be an Italian girl. She could be Puerto Rican. Like you know, and I think that it offers like just a great opportunity to, you know, kind of attack those viewpoints, you know, where people are so, you know, just putting so much into this suitcase of, you know, of identity. And I actually got, I don't know if you've ever had him on your podcast, Thomas Chatterton Williams.
No, I've talked to him a little bit. No, I should. He's awesome.
So I don't know if it's the last book that he put out, maybe he has another one out. It's a really slim book. And in it, for those of you who might not be familiar with him, his dad is black, his mom is white, and he married I believe a French woman, and has two children that are like blonde hair, you know, blue eyes, perhaps. Yeah, they might have like blue eyes and all that. And when he, you know, really became a father, he really started questioning like what is race really? What is this stuff? And in his book, he goes and he takes a 23andMe test and like sees his breakdown. So he actually, in that book, inspired me to do my own 23andMe, and to, you know, see like, you know, how do I come to be? And it's like, you know, it's a fun thing to, you know, to think about, you know, to like, oh, this is where my ancestry is from, you know, but ultimately it comes down to what, you know, who you are and what you're doing with your life, and, you know, what kind of influence you're bringing to the world. You know?
Yeah, these identity marker things it's a losing battle, because I don't know about you, but like your wife is white, right?
Yeah, she's got yeah, she hasn't done her 23andMe, but I think she's got like a lot of Kentucky in her.
Okay.
So.
So your kids are going to be some weird mutt group. My wife is Filipino. She's a Filipino immigrant. So like my kids are like, you know, HAPA kids. Like most of our friends, the majority of our friends are mixed race, like couples with mixed race kids. So like you want to play this game of, you know, I have this kind of background, so I have these special characteristics. Like you got like 1 or 2 generations left before it's like my 23andMe is actually hilarious. It's like I'm like a golden retriever. It's like 99.6% German.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So I'm like, you know, I'm like a purebred, but went and spoiled that party with my wife, my like, you know, island immigrant wife. And like that's inevitable. That's just the way it's gonna go. And you keep playing these games of like, well, I'm this protected category because of this ethnicity or this, you know, racial category. It's silly. I had Sheena Mason on the podcast, and she has this theory of racelessness, and I think it's just like that's where we're headed, just in the way how easy it is to travel and connect and things like that. That you're playing a losing game if you say like I'm this protected category that you can't make fun of, or that I should have these special privileges, because before you know it, we're all going to be some mix of that, right?
Yeah, no, you know, definitely. And also like that kind of guilt tripping only works if the person you're trying to guilt trip allows That sounds like a guilt trip. So, I've said this before. Like I've identified as a spick because I've been called that growing up, and with that, I have zero white guilt. So it's sort of like I'm not apologizing for anything that I'm not responsible for personally. So when it comes to like guilt tripping and all that, like you got to take that to somebody else because I'm not gonna, it's not gonna work on me. Like my dad's a wetback, legit wetback, crossed the border in Mexico, came here, worked his ass off, didn't speak English. It's like that's where I'm coming from. And for somebody to try to put the weight of some kind of original sin onto me, it's like, nah, we're not doing that,
Yeah. So like if this is a losing battle, then how much longer? Like I found you originally from the We the Internet TV stuff on YouTube. Is that still all up or has it been taken down?
I think there might be some videos that have been like unlisted on YouTube. Only I every now and then I could go and I try to look for them.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, a lot of the videos that we made are still up there, either on YouTube or Facebook and that sort of thing. There's no Instagram or Twitter though.
Okay. Well, they're excellent. I mean, that's why I originally reached out to you, and it's really cool for you to come on because it was early on in my like this whatever public journey of mine. Like it was because I was going through that turbulent, like what's going on? Why is this craziness like accepted by everybody? And then you put a comedic lens on it that I hadn't seen. No one was really going like that hard in the paint like you guys were. And it was like really, really like on the nose. And you had a really cool group because it was again, like racially and, identity marker, diverse group, so it was like a South Park style of like, you just kind of shit on everybody. And it was really hilariously well done and everything. I mean, it was really, really good. If you guys haven't looked at it, you should definitely check out. I think it would just be like We the Internet TV on YouTube where you could look up Lou Perez. I mean, they're great and it's social commentary, but I wonder if they were taken down or demonetized. But it's gonna be, it's gonna come full circle because more and more people are waking up to it. I was teaching this like, the dangers of wokeness basically in my civics class just yesterday. And I wrote the class in 2018. And when I wrote the class in 2018 and started teaching it, the kids were like, what are you talking about? There's no negatives to, supporting trans people or supporting, anti-racism. And now when I teach it, the kids are like, yeah, obviously there's craziness here. So it's changed quick. And I think that now the more and more people are recognizing the craziness. I wonder how long it'll be until it's like more mainstream that we can poke fun of all this nonsense. Do you think it's going to get there or how do you think it's going to work out?
Oh yeah, I think so for sure. And I think even recently stuff that's coming to a head. You look at what happened in Memphis with that I can't bring myself to watch the video of
it's horrible.
Being beaten to death
by
by the police. I've gotten very soft with stuff like that. Like I might talk a big game like a tough guy, but I don't like seeing that stuff. And what do we hear? When we hear white supremacy, and even before that with the the two mass shootings in California where the two gunmen were Asian. You also hear white supremacy, and it just comes to the point where it's like, look, there's a temperature at which water boils, okay? And we will accept that. Quit saying that it boils at a different temperature, quit trying to, play this game because it just becomes, it's a game of rhetoric rather than a game of a reality of just accepting things as they are. Like the world is a very complicated place. Terrible things happen, and white supremacy is not one of the forces of nature. It's not gravity and white supremacy that basically keep everything bound. And I think so many of these woke theories or ways of seeing the world are just so hollow, and they're just not built on strong foundations. And you can see how they how they move, how they shift depending on what what narrative they want to push.
Yeah. So I think that people are kind of waking up to it. They're starting to go, okay, like, Babylon Bee is helping a little bit with that. But like Joe Biden, like you were around too. We're the same age. I'm 40 as well. Like I remember Bushisms. Like W had great ones. I mean, he was such a jumbled speaker, and that was just something that everyone could just come along and be like, wow, our president just sounds like an idiot. And I think now even like my friends on the left are like recognizing that in Biden, like, oh wow, he really sounds like a buffoon. It's like, yeah, he does. Yes, he does. Isn't that nice? Like we can all just agree that the people who are in charge sound like they're idiots, that Veep is not that far from the truth.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember strategery, right? That was one of the big Bushisms. I think one of the differences were with between Biden and Bush was when Bush was saying that stuff, we were people were saying like, oh, he's stupid, or he's really getting into that Texan role, kid that was born in Connecticut. He's really, Whereas when I see Biden, and I'm I did not vote for Biden. I'm not a supporter. I'm definitely a critic. It's to me it's pretty sad because it seems like we're watching somebody who's just losing his faculties, and so it's a little bit more harder to watch. But on the same note, it's even I think more hilarious that for the people defending him and what he's doing compared to like when people were defending Bush for his stuff.
Yeah, sometimes I troll a little bit when someone posts something that's like, leave the man alone, his brain is barely functioning. It's like, it's like, oh well, is that better or worse, the fact that he's like old and senile? Like, would you rather have a dumb president or one who's not even aware of what's going on? Like, it's not good either way.
One of my favorite Onion headlines was when Ronald Reagan died. And the headline was something like, Ronald Reagan's body finally dies. And it's just, oh my God, it was just so, so perfect.
Yeah, those are great. Like Babylon Bee, The Onion, they're really, really good. There was a great article before the Redskins changed their name about it was an Onion article about how the owner refuses to change the name, and they laid out every anti-Semitic slur in like one paragraph about the owner. And like how like he was, and I'm not going to repeat it, but like it's funny. I'll like link to it or something. Like it's funny because it just breaks it down. I teach at a Jewish school now, and it's like the only place that will let me kind of do my thing, and they're great. But I show them that article. I was like, how does this make you feel? Like when it attacks you, and like and then helping them to like recognize that, like to identify the message behind the joke is actually really a really astute one. Talking about John Haidt, one of his quotes that I use and apply all the time is that the human brain is not a logic processor, it's a story processor. And that's why I think that your work is really, really important. And I know you maybe think about it like that, you're trying to entertain and stuff, but like it's important because people need stories to connect with what's going on. And what's a good story is a funny story, like an entertaining story. So you got to entertain people if you're going to try and like highlight what's going on in the world and highlight some things to get them to be thinking and stuff like that. I try to be funny in front of the classroom because if the class is laughing, that means they're paying attention. They might be listening to my messages. But what you do seems to be aligned with that concept of how the brain processes information, because you could give them stats, but they're just but as soon as you break it down in a sketch, in a comedy bit, in an idea, then they go, oh, I kind of see it more clearly then. Do you feel like, is that some of the feedback that you get, that people are kind of like get their eyes opened up to what's going on because of your work? Or is it too deep? I don't know. I got that.
Well, no, I remember especially during like the We the Internet years, where I would put out a sketch, and then this is back when like Facebook was a lot kinder to creators. They would actually like let your stuff be seen. Yeah. And the comment section would just fill up with people who used whatever the content was in the video to spark arguments and conversation. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
But there was always the moments when sort of that conversation would sort of spiral into something else. And I would need to remind myself, wait a minute, this was a comedy sketch that started this. You know, it's not like I put a treatise out there. It wasn't like I with an op-ed. It was like, you know, there was a sketch here. And so, you know, I definitely I like I think even more than like fostering conversation on whatever the topic is, I do like fostering conversation of whatever I just made is. Like I like that people are talking about it, or people like, oh, that's so messed up, or oh man, dude, like you know, you're a terrible human being for even thinking that. Like I like that. I like that response to it too, because I know that you're whatever I'm doing is affecting somebody. You
Yeah.
know, it's hitting a nerve there. And you know, when you talk about like the importance of storytelling, I'm with you like 100%. We both have kids. My I have young ones, one and the oldest is going to be 3. And one of the things that are one of the movies that we're watching all the time, and that my 1-year-old especially loves, is the film Turning Red, which I don't know if have you ever seen Turning Red?
The panda.
Yeah, the red
Yeah.
panda.
Yeah. I've seen it.
And you know, I have to come and say I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic on so many levels. And the story that's being told is about a Chinese Canadian girl who is, you know, around the age when a girl would, you know, get her period for the first time, and she discovers that she has this, you know, she turns into a red panda when she gets excited or angry and all that. So it's kind of like a Teen Wolf thing, and it takes place in like the early 2000s. So there's a lot of like boy band stuff, and you know, so there are a lot of like markers there, stuff that I knew like like growing up. And it's like a tale of friendship and bravery and becoming yourself, and it's really really well done. I'm not the audience for it, you know. They didn't give, she didn't write this thinking about this 40-year-old dude, you know, this 40-year-old dirty comic from you know, who lives in Jersey. But yet the storytelling is so strong that I'm with her all the way, to the point where every morning, morning I have to watch this with my kids, you know. So I'm very hopeful that there are, you know, people willing to tell stories that, you know, can transcend whatever you know, whatever identity is you know, the stars are, you know.
Yeah, I think just like wrapping this up, I think that we have to bring humor into the craziness that's going on right now. I don't know. I mean, there might be like legitimate aliens, UFOs. That seems to be just like something that people just don't seem to
We don't care about it anymore. We don't
yeah,
care.
like when I was growing up, I was like, what's gonna happen when we find UFOs? I didn't think indifference. That I didn't think. It's like,
Yeah.
wait, who's Pete Davidson? I don't care about like it's
Well,
crazy.
Pete Davidson needs to, you know, start sleeping with an alien. Like that's the
He
next step,
he
and then
probably will. but
bring it all
but
together.
like I don't know what's going to happen. This world is crazy. I mean, it's really nuts. I don't know if we're going to go to war with China, with Russia. Our president, all of our leadership seems to be idiots. Like the world is crazy. I don't know. It's scary having young kids. Like what's going to happen? So let's at least laugh our way through this. You know, I mean, it's really like it's really neat. You know, you mentioned Norm Macdonald in your book, and I really loved Norm Macdonald, and just was like a legend, almost more what he did behind the scenes than what he even did, you know, on camera. Just like he's like this entity, you know, like this, like, you know, the urban legend of Norm. But when he had cancer, apparently he like didn't want to do chemo and stuff. He just wanted to like ride it out. He just wanted to like really just live out his days like in a joyous way, because he was so focused on comedy. And I think that hopefully it's not the end of the world, but like as things get crazy, which they probably seem to be going in that direction, like we got to laugh our way through this. We got to find the humor in the craziness. Otherwise it just gets really, really dark. And what you're doing is important. And I think that it matters a lot, Lou. Like it matters for people to be able to laugh at the craziness. And as things crumble, you'll be someone that I'll be looking to of like, okay, where's the humor here? Let's crack some jokes about what's going on here. Because if we don't, we're going to be crying all the time and be terrified all the time. So I'd rather choose a more joyous emotion. And you elicit that in times of craziness. So I really appreciate what you're doing. And I hope that you keep it up, man. I hope that it's like, as things get crazier, just keep that commentary. You can be my, and you fit the identity market too. You can be my substitute, Greg Giraldo.
That's such a wow. No, I'm really moved by you saying that. Thank you. It's incredibly humbling, and when it comes to like Norm Macdonald, for one, here you have a funny man, right, who died with so much dignity too, and keeping this between himself and those closest to him, not writing out what would be a incredible publicity. Here's Norm dying, and I'm going to go on tour. Who's going to catch Norm before he goes? So there's something there that I think that is just incredible to look up to. I joke around in my book where I'm like, I'm not Norm, so if I had cancer, you guys would know it. You'd get sick of me talking about it. But also, like with Norm, you look at a guy who was so willing to just try it, just so willing to put stuff out there and to fail, and to on so many different levels, whether it's like these, corny jokes that, he, dragged out into 8-minute bits on Conan O'Brien, or, really, just incredible, well-written stand-up comedy, or these conversations that seem to come out of nowhere about the deep, the depths of humanity. The other day, somebody on Twitter said that they often reshare this exchange that was between Norm Macdonald and Neil deGrasse Tyson, where basically Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying that the universe doesn't care about you. And Norm Macdonald, this funny man, had to remind Neil, well, technically we are part of the universe. So every time that we are caring for one another, it is the universe caring for itself. And I think it's really important to, to have people who are just willing to take a shot and to see, and willing to, take some blowback for just speaking the way that they see the world. And for me, that's through comedy. I can't imagine what it would be like seeing the world just differently than I do every day. Like I'm blessed, but also cursed in some way to just find humor in some of the darkest recesses. But I think it's really important to find the light, as you talked about earlier, is you got to be willing to confront the darkness and see, what little photons are peeking through.
Yeah. I mean, Norm was so smart. He was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and basically won, but then Reed just kind of talked him out of it at the very end.
Unreal.
He's amazing, man. But that joke isn't funny anymore. I really I don't come on. That's the cover. Yeah. So I don't recommend thank you for holding that up, because I don't have a hard copy here. I don't recommend like books that often. I don't just bring people on to like promote things or anything like that. Like I reached out to you. Like I wanted to bring on because I thought that the book really highlighted a lot of important things. And it's just like a way to look at the craziness that's going on in the world. It's a better lens to look at it through. So I really recommend the book. I'm sure it's on Amazon and stuff like that, right?
Yep. It's on,
I got it on Audible. So
I read the audio book.
Yeah, you do it yourself, which helps. I don't like when people like hire out for that. So yeah, thank you for doing that. But Lou Perez, thank you so much for coming back on the program. I hope to do this again. If you're around LA, we'd love to get together and find something to do. But I really appreciate what you're doing out there, and I hope the book is a tremendous success, because it was great.
Thank you, Will. Likewise, I'm a fan, and it's great to talk to you.
All right, man.